We're now live on Facebook with Jack Wilson, the chairman of the Republican Party of Virginia, total glutton for punishment. Job pays nothing, but he gets to do this. You're running for re-election for the Republican Party chair. Why are you doing that, Jack?
Well, Chris, I took office as chairman not quite 2 years ago. I came in to fill the unexpired term of the previous chair. At that time, members of the State Central Committee came to me and asked if I would step up and lead the party. We were clearly in a difficult situation. And so having been involved in the party for a number of years, I said I would do it. And it's been a great learning experience. I've really learned what we can do as a party. And now I want to venture out on my own 4-year term where I can continue to grow the party and do what we need to do to start winning in Virginia again.
Okay. To do that, you have to win this unassembled convention. Explain what that is. Most people who will view this probably aren't going to be attending, but those who are probably need more information than they would think, because we've seen the disruption in the 5th and the 7th and the problems there. Obviously this is not as difficult structurally as those, but given the political nuances for the candidates there, tell us what's going to happen on Saturday the 15th.
Sure. Well, again, maybe I'll give a little background. Originally we had scheduled a state convention in a traditional format at the Richmond Convention Center for the first weekend in May. We recognized about mid-March that was not going to be feasible, so we postponed it. And we'd hoped that by the end of June, we could still do a traditional convention at the convention center, but Governor Northam wouldn't allow us to do that either. So we ended up having to do what a lot of the district committees had to do, which is come up with an unassembled convention. It's a sort of a phrase we coined, because what we're trying to do is mimic as closely as possible the mechanics of a traditional convention. You have to have been filed to be a delegate, weighted vote still is in place, and so forth. So what will happen on Saturday, August the 15th, is there will be polling places set up around Virginia. They'll be open from 9 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon. The polling places are on the Virginia, RPV website at virginia.gop. All the information about how the election process will take place. But essentially what voters, again, you have to have been a delegate elected at your mass meeting way back in February, March timeframe. You'll just go to the designated location, you'll pull up, you'll get to vote, and leave. You're not hanging around. You just come in, vote and leave. And
it's a pretty extraordinary process. You have to drive, probably several hours for most of these people to fill out a ballot. I guess when they pull up, they're credentialed, registered. Okay, you're on the list. Let's see your ID. I assume you're going to do that.
Correct.
And then yes. They're given a ballot, and then they submit the ballot and they leave, and that's it.
And that's it. Yeah. Now, so some locations, some of the districts have had, because of the distances involved, have set up 2 separate polling locations. Like in the 5th Congressional District has one sort of at the southern end and one at the northern end. The 6th Congressional District has done the same thing. The 3rd and the 4th actually combined because they were closer down in the Chesapeake area. Okay. So all those locations, but that's essentially it. The idea is you show up, you vote, and you leave. And
what is your expected vote total or turnout for this convention?
Well, I think ballparkish, we have about 2,200 maybe delegates that are at this point eligible to participate. It's hard to say. We've seen some of the district conventions that had obviously congressional nominations involved where the turnout was 60, 70, 80% of the registered delegates. Some of the district conventions that only had party offices were roughly 50%. So I'm hoping people will get out. Obviously, we're talking about the future of the Republican Party of Virginia, and I'm hoping people will make the effort to get out and vote.
What are the driving factors in your reelection? You've got 2 opponents, Michael Scholware and Rich Anderson, former delegate Rich Anderson, running against you. It's ranked choice voting. Describe that for our audience, because that's going to become more of an issue in elections in Virginia coming up. We'll have laws that allow it to be considered permissible at the local level. Sure. Let's talk about that and your campaign.
Sure. Well, and this actually, the Republican Party of Virginia adopted a possibility of ranked choice voting well before the pandemic started. I think it was a year or so ago that we adopted it. So this wasn't something new. We'd actually had a method in place that could be used for party offices, et cetera. And so we just are implementing it. But essentially, the idea is it too is designed to mimic what would happen at a traditional convention. So, in a traditional convention, so you got 3 candidates, you'd have the first ballot, and if one candidate didn't get 50% of the vote, the lowest vote getter would drop off, and then you'd be down to the remaining 2 candidates. And in a normal convention, you do another ballot, and whoever won. Right. So what we're doing here is we're shortcutting that by saying, okay, you go in and you're going to vote for the person you want to be chairman. And then you're going to say, but if my guy isn't one of the top 2, who are the remaining 2 do I want to vote for? As you would on the second ballot. So your ballot will say, here's my first choice, here's my second choice.
Wow, how's that tabulated? The same way? I mean,
Same way. They'll tabulate across the first line, and they'll see if any one of the candidates gets 50% based on the first choice votes. And if they don't, then what will happen is whoever the lowest vote person is, they'll look at that person's ballots and see who their second choice was, and they get added to the totals of the remaining 2.
So should that be done for statewide elections as well and General Assembly elections?
No, I don't think so. I mean, again, I think you get to the point where you want to have campaigns, and I'm not quite sure that we're ready for that for public offices. Again, we put it in place perhaps for party offices, and fortunately we've got that ability here. We could have done it and could have been adopted for our nominating contests at the 7th Congressional District, and they did in fact use it at the 10th Congressional District to nominate their congressional candidate.
Yeah, it seems this is where this is where people get lost. It's good for you, but not good for the state. That's a messaging problem, I think, because when you say we're going to do ranked choice voting, but we don't recommend it for state offices or federal offices, that's kind of a disconnect, don't you think?
Yeah, well, again, I think our preference would have been to do a traditional convention this year where we would have done it the way we always do it and have multiple ballots until you get to that one candidate. So this ranked choice balloting is really designed to mimic what we normally do at a state convention. Normally, when you're going with a statewide office, you're not doing it by a convention process. It's a normal election. Normally, you'd have a Republican and a Democrat, so I don't know that you would need a ranked choice ballot in those circumstances.
Well, I think a ranked choice voting situation might encourage others to run as candidates in a third-party situation to challenge, frankly, some of the safer districts from being so crazy with the people they attract, because you're locked into a binary choice, and it seems logical that if you're going to do it at the party level, you would do it for other offices as well.
You might, and again, that's something obviously beyond the purview of the Republican Party of Virginia to decide. That's going to be a General Assembly.
Well, I mean, but if RPV came out and said, we endorse that, I mean, you endorse your candidates for office, you endorse certain issues, become part of the platform, and do all those fun things on other issues. It seems like a one that shouldn't escape that discussion.
Yeah, and it's clearly something that merits further study. Obviously, we're just trying it out our first time this cycle in the middle of a pandemic. Let's see how it works.
Well, it's an exciting reform idea, and to have the RPV of all institutions in the state try something new is something unto itself that's exciting. Just to have RPV try something new, because isn't there a movement afoot within this convention to actually reduce the size of a state central committee from 75 to 54 members?
There is, and a group came out earlier this year with the idea of reducing the state central committee. I was opposed to that from the beginning, because one of the key principles of that was the proposal is to reduce the voices of the VFRW, our Republican women, the college Republicans, and our young Republicans, who are frankly some of the hardest workers we have in the party. So I opposed that proposal from the very beginning, because I don't think that is how we grow our party, which is clearly what we need to do. We need to sort of get back to being that big tent Republican Party that Ronald Reagan was so fond of. I'm not sure shrinking the voices of the women, college Republicans, and young Republicans is the way to do it.
No, it seems to me that you're going to, and you should might want to quintuple the actual size of the state central to get more people involved in the political process. I did a little Googling this morning, and it's been 3,929 days since the Republican Party won a statewide election. It'll be 4,000 on October 16th. So before this election, it'll have been over 4,000 days since the Republican Party has won statewide. Now they're considering reducing the people who control the party apparatus and shrink it even further. I mean, that seems counterintuitive to trying to win.
Well, I think you're right. And you start looking around, I think the Democrats in Virginia, I think their state central committee, the equivalent of our state, close to 300. And you look at some of the more successful Republican states around us, I think North Carolina is several hundred in their Republican Party executive committee. So, and that's where I am. I think we need to grow our party, and we need to get more buy-in at the state level. If we can reach consensus on issues at the state central committee with a larger group, then it just builds consensus statewide. But specifically cutting the voices of our women, our college Republicans, and our young Republicans is clearly the wrong way to go, and that's really the demographics that we need to be reaching to win again.
Right, and I think with the ballot issues that we talked on beforehand, you're taking on an issue to secure the ballot through absentee balloting and making sure that there's a certified signature for the absentee ballots, explain a witness signature for those ballots. Explain what that is and why the RPV is taking this fight on.
Sure. Well, longstanding Virginia statute requires that if you're going to vote in an election, primary or general election, and you request a mail-in absentee ballot, that for voter integrity and voter security, that when you sign your envelope to return your absentee ballot, you have to have a witness see that you're the one who's actually returning the ballot. And the witness signs that and sends it in. It's been a longstanding practice. It's nothing new. Well, earlier this year, the ACLU started funding litigation, not just in Virginia, but around the country, to loosen voter integrity laws. And that's one of them they brought in Virginia prior to the primaries. The ACLU, on behalf of the League of Women Voters, filed a lawsuit to say, let's do away with the signature requirement on absentee ballots. Right. And of course, the state, the Attorney General, is the one that's supposed to defend the Virginia statutes. The Attorney General's office caved immediately and said, we'll be happy to waive that requirement. We're not even going to fight the request to limit or eliminate that witness signature. So the Republican Party of Virginia intervened in that litigation. We said, no, if the state isn't going to defend voter integrity, then the Republican Party of Virginia will. And so we intervened in that litigation, and we're continuing to fight because they now want to do that for the general election this November.
What's the process on this? So I guess you're filing an injunction to make sure that the Attorney General doesn't not do that?
Well, essentially what's the posture, the case was filed earlier this year. It's still pending. We were able to initially get the judge ruled that, the absentee ballot signature requirement could be waived, but only for purposes of the primary election earlier this year in June. Well, the ACLU and the League of Women Voters haven't given up. So that lawsuit is still pending. And now they're coming back to say, we want to get that signature requirement waived for the general election as well. And so the judge has ordered a briefing schedule. And again, it's the Republican Party of Virginia that is trying to defend the voter integrity statute. The Attorney General has rolled over and agreed with the ACLU, not surprisingly. And that is what we're fighting right now.
Well, there's always a lot of fights, it seems, internally in the Republican Party of Virginia. That's what political parties do. You had your share of them in the 5th and the 7th with their very questionable tactics to more or less rig the structure of those conventions. Where does the Republican Party go now? Because I understand part of the conversation on Saturday the 15th is going to be whether they're determined to go primary or convention for the 2021 statewide elections. Where do you see that ending up?
Well, that won't be decided or not. That's not on the ballot, and that's not before the delegation on the 15th of August. That is a decision the State Central Committee makes, and usually makes in the fall prior to the 2021 election. So that would be a decision made in September, probably.
September, but the party plan nomination process of reducing what's known as the change committee. They
Right.
want to reduce it to 54. That's largely a convention focused group. If they win, do you expect the nomination for Republicans in June of 21 will be a convention?
That's what I would anticipate. Given what the proposals are, I know most of the spots that are filled by those groups that they want to cut are generally pro-primary state central committee members. So if those positions get cut, I think it probably does come down to a primarily a convention majority on the state central committee. So I would anticipate that if those party plan amendments get approved, a convention would likely be voted on by the state central in the fall.
Where do you think the party plan amendments stand right now? I mean, what's the likelihood of it, the state central reducing from 75 to 54?
I'm optimistic that it's going to fail. It requires a 75% vote to pass, and it's just an up or down vote. So given I think the concerns that have been expressed about reducing the voices of the women, YRs and CRs, I think there's enough opposition out there to defeat it. Now, it may get more than a majority vote, but that ain't gonna be enough to pass it, fortunately.
Okay, so it had like 75%. When will those results be announced?
They're going to be announced sometime Saturday evening. Again, the voting will go from 9 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon, and then those will have to be consolidated, statewide. And so I anticipate sometime early Saturday evening we should have all the results in.
So does this process, is this paper ballot?
It's a paper ballot. It is.
Okay, and is it electronic scanned, or is this going to be physically counted?
It's just going to be physically counted. We're looking at, again, if you divide out the number of delegates, some of the congressional districts may have 100 or 200 people voting. Some of them, the biggest one, maybe the seventh might have 400 or 500. So it's not going to be an unmanageable to count these by hand, tally them, and then get in the results to the central.
Is it weighted by district or total vote?
It is just like at a state convention. Each unit has its weighted vote. So it'll be done just like a regular convention, weighted vote by unit. And so that's one of the things, all those unit weights have to be brought back into the central location. So it's not done by district. It's still a state convention. So each unit vote will come in.
Explain that briefly, Jack Wilson, Chairman of Republican Party Virginia, what that weighting process is in a convention. And so, like, if Hanover and the 7th has a certain number of delegates, they get a certain percentage. How does that going to play out for these other issues? Go ahead and explain the process.
Well, it's basically the weighted vote is based on the historical strength of a particular locality in electing Republicans. And so in areas where you've got a heavier Republican vote numbers for Republican candidates, those units get a higher weighted vote at a state convention. And then whatever their weighted vote is divided by the number of delegates that show up to vote. So, and again, I'll use an example, say a Fairfax County, and this isn't the exact number. I think they've got technically 1,100 weighted votes. So if 500 people show up, each of those 500 have a 1.5 vote.
Okay.
Likewise, if one person shows up, that person has 1,100 votes.
I think this gets to the heart of the problem with the Republican Party of Virginia. They keep weighting themselves out of the game because they don't take one person, one vote in a primary. And as such, they haven't been able to really grow the party. Like I said, it's been almost 4,000 days since the Republicans won a statewide election. Should we just get rid of conventions altogether?
Well, I have come to the conclusion over the recent couple of years that given the contentious nature of the conventions, that we should not be nominating our state and federal offices by convention. We just are not able to unify as a party after one of those conventions is concluded around our nominees. This year, for example, we still have some lingering animosity in the 5th and perhaps the 7th arising out of conventions, but we don't seem to have it at all with our United States Senate nominee, Daniel Gay. That was a primary. Everybody had an equal opportunity to run. He won, and the party has coalesced around him as the nominee. That's the way it's supposed to be. And I just think primaries are probably the best way of keeping the party unified after a nominating contest.
Yeah, it seems to me that when if you have a contentious nomination battle, I mean the most recently is in the 7th, and they waited a full month to hold a convention, and you basically lost the summer, and you're taking on an incumbent, relatively popular incumbent, toss-up election, and with Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger. But it seems to me you've lost basically 3 months of the summer because they had to more or less rig the system, rig the convention for a particular outcome. So it's a real shame for democracy that actually takes place in the 21st century.
Well, and again, that's the downside of the convention process. It's all done at the district committee level, and in the 7th District Committee made their decisions how they would proceed with their nomination, and they were able to do it based on the votes they had on the 7th District Committee. Same thing in the 5th District Committee. The district committee made the decisions when it would be, where it would be, and they control that process. And that's where I go back to, in a primary, it's a level playing field. There are none of those committee decisions that could be viewed as influencing or helping one candidate over another. In the primary, you're all on the ballot, you all run, and whoever wins, wins.
Well, I mean, allegations were made that in both the 5th and the 7th, members of those committees were on the payroll of certain candidates, and they were voting to favor one of their candidates and they're actually on the payroll. Was that true? And should that process continue, and if it's not true, should that process be make sure that it doesn't happen for the integrity of our democratic system?
Well, I know for a fact it was true in the 5th congressional district, because it came up even on an appeal to the State Central Committee to suggest that those that were paid employees of one of the candidates should not have been allowed to participate in the decision-making process. Unfortunately, our party plan currently does not prohibit that. It requires that if you've got that conflict, you have to disclose it, but it doesn't preclude you from participating. One of the amendments that I do hope passes at our state convention on August 15th is a conflict of interest provision that specifically provides you could not participate in the decision-making process if you're on the payroll of one of the candidates. I hope passes.
Is that also 75%?
It is a 75% one.
The threshold's pretty high there. I mean, one would have hoped that the integrity of the politicians and their campaign staff would have risen above that. But in today's day and age, I just don't understand how that's not just completely driven out of the party. Let's turn our attention to the 2021 cycle, and everyone's going to say, "Oh, we should focus on 2020." But let's be honest, we've got a number of candidates out there considering kicking the tires pretty hard about running statewide. And the only announced candidate so far is State Senator Amanda Chase from Chesterfield County, which I think is your home county, Jack Wilson, chairman of the RPV. What are the chances for a 2021 comeback for the Republican Party in Virginia?
Well, I think we're in good shape. I think clearly what we are seeing in Virginia, starting even earlier this year before the pandemic hit, just seeing what Democrat leadership in Virginia looks like, is turning off quite a number of centrist Virginians who may have thought that the Virginia Democrats of today were the same as the Virginia Democrats of old, and that's clearly not the case anymore. And so when you start looking at what the Democrats have done in the General Assembly and what the governor has signed, you can't find much difference between Virginia Democrats and California Democrats and New York Democrats. It is clearly the Democrat Party of the National Democrat Party, which is far left. And I think that has just energized clearly the Republican base. We saw that with a lot of the Second Amendment energy earlier this year. And then you see the Democrat approach to the pandemic in Virginia, which is closing down small businesses, using the power of the governor's executive orders to pick winners and losers in the economy. That is just resonating with Republican voters, but it's also resonating with that middle group of independents that we need to win. I think they are fed up. So I think 2021 is going to be a good year for Republican candidates in Virginia.
You think that there is an opportunity for Virginia Republicans to recapture swing voters in suburban areas, especially if Joe Biden wins the presidency?
Well, I do. Again, then you can also go back to sort of the tradition in Virginia that the governor's mansion flips from the party opposite of whoever wins the White House. So Joe Biden were unfortunately to win this November. I think that actually bodes well for Republicans next year as well. But I think we do have that opportunity. I think when you start getting into some of these issues of small businesses being shut down, restaurants being closed, people know other families who are hurting because of Democrat policies in Virginia. I think that will carry over to the ballot box, not only this November, but next November as well.
One of the candidates, I mean, the only announced candidate for governor right now is State Senator Amanda Chase, very controversial figure. Has said some very controversial, overtly racist things in the press and on her social media page. Is it incumbent upon the Republican Party of Virginia to make statements about some of her or any candidate's positions?
Well, again, traditionally, and I think the party's position is the party doesn't get involved in picking in winners and losers in the nominating contest. And so that's clearly where we will continue to be. We'll provide the infrastructure for our ultimate nominee. We will rally around our ultimate nominee, but it's really not the position of the party to get engaged in the nominating process itself. That is really for the candidates and the voters to decide. And so if a candidate makes a statement that the voters are upset with, that candidate will pay the price at the ballot box.
So you're willing to let that process go forward, and anyone can say anything. There's nothing out of bounds for a candidate to say. I mean, some of the things that she has said are pretty bad. I mean, they're not pretty bad; they are bad.
Well,
I think leaders in the party should stand up and say that's unacceptable.
Well, I mean, I think some have, and some of our colleagues have weighed in on those. And again, I don't know that it's a free range to say whatever you want, wherever you want, whenever you want. But I think it's incumbent on the party to stay neutral in these nominating contests. And it's up to other candidates and other Republicans to weigh in. And ultimately, we select a nominee and we support that nominee.
But the brand, frankly, Jack, the brand of the Republican Party is becoming difficult for suburban voters to align with and to identify with. And even this weekend, Senator Chase is campaigning with Ted Nugent, who is a known and admitted pedophile, and yet no one's saying you really shouldn't be doing that. That's a bad look for the Republican Party. I mean, at the same time, nationally, you have Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, this massive scandal brewing, and here you have a state senator campaigning with Ted Nugent.
Well, and I've heard other voices again, raising that issue. But again, she's a candidate. She's out there running. She's doing what she is doing, and it's up to her campaign to run the campaign she's going to run. If she's turning off suburban voters, it's going to cost her A, probably in the nominating process, and B, in a general election. So, obviously we've got some challenges, but other Republicans are expressing concerns. But I think the party's role is to stay neutral in a nominating contest.
How about the general? I mean, if she wins the party nomination, all of these statements, all of these votes, all of these public positions that the potential nominee of the party will have taken, is the party going to get behind someone like that?
Well, the party, again, the role of the party is to support the nominee. And that's what we do. That's our role. And I've always said, if you can't support the nominee of the party as a party leader, then you need to step down. So if I got to the point where I wasn't comfortable being the party leader that I could support our nominee, I feel as chairman, it would be incumbent on me to step down. And that goes from the party, chairman all the way down. But clearly, at the end of the day, I always look at it now, a Republican nominee is going to be better than likely any Democrat nominee going forward in Virginia in terms of policies and what we can accomplish as Republicans versus what the Democrats would do, again, with all the reins of power.
Well, let's take a look at that. Kirk Cox is running, 30-year veteran of the legislature. And when I came in, Kirk Cox was an arch conservative, and now he's being branded as a moderate of all things. Well, while moderate might be nice guy, which he clearly is, former teacher and all around good guy. I mean, I don't think anyone would have any hesitation saying this. His character is above reproach. Where is the Republican Party today, and where is it going to be in 2021?
Well, again, it's an interesting. You mentioned Senator Chase is from Chesterfield. Senator Chase is my state senator, and Delegate Kirk Cox is my member of the House of Delegates. He's my delegate, so
is that right?
Wow. So, and again, I think that will clearly provide, assuming Kirk makes the decision to get in. I think he is doing the appropriate thing, is waiting till after November. Let's focus on this November's elections. He's put a placeholder there, and I appreciate that, but his focus is on this November before getting engaged in 2021. But I think that would, if those are the only two candidates, I think there'll clearly be a contrast in style, contrast in message, and contrast in approach to the governor's race. I think that'll be healthy for the party.
I mean, there's going to be a lot more candidates getting in. I think Kirk might nudge a few out. State Senator Bill Carrico, State Senator Emmett Hanger, businessman Pete Snyder. I've heard Glenn Youngkin. Tons of people are looking at this because the opportunity for 2021 is more favorable for Republicans, given if Biden wins. Does all this attention kind of tip the hat that Republicans in Virginia think Trump is going to lose?
I don't think so. I mean, I think we start looking at some of the polls already closing for this November. I think the president's going to win. I think we've got a good opportunity to make a good run for the president and perhaps win Virginia. I think we can win Virginia for the president this November, again, because of that pent-up frustration with the Democrats that have started in January this year, and it's not letting up. And so I think there's a good chance that the president will get reelected in this November. And I don't think that'll discourage Republicans from seeking the gubernatorial nomination next year. I think a win in Virginia just shows that Virginia can be won, and candidates will step up to seek the nomination.
On my radio show Tuesday, I had Kim Gray on, councilwoman running for the mayoral position of Richmond, the mayor of Richmond. Very impressive candidate. Is the Republican Party going to get behind any candidates in the city of Richmond? Because what she was running on, basically is a law and order, safer streets, trying to get control of the city of Richmond. Is the Republican Party of Virginia going to get involved in that race?
I wouldn't anticipate that the Republican Party of Virginia would get involved in it. That's not to say that the Richmond committee might not get involved. They may take a look at supporting a candidate. But I think that law and order issue is clearly going to play well this November. I mean, the lawlessness that we have seen from Mayor Stoney in Richmond has just been a disgrace. And I think Republicans, independents are going to be looking at a change in leadership there. But I don't foresee the Republican Party of Virginia getting involved. But again, the Richmond GOP might.
Yeah. Has any polling shown in Virginia, to your knowledge, a shift in voter sentiment when it comes to law and order, safety issues? We're in a very obviously tense time when it comes to personal safety with the pandemic. I mean, it seems to me that's going to be a somewhat easily translatable issue for ex-urban, suburban, and inner suburban voters.
It is, and I have seen some early polling. And while on the one hand, the governor's response to COVID-19 inexplicably gets positive reviews from the polls, the law and order, the Democrats are way underwater on that issue. And I think that's an issue that's going to really be lifted up this November. And I think it's going to help Republicans across the state.
First things first, Jack Wilson, you have an election in 10 days' time. Is it 10 days? 9 days' time. What's your message to the delegates who will be unassembling and voting precincts all around the Commonwealth?
Well, again, as I mentioned earlier on, I think it's taken me a little bit of time to, as chairman, to understand what the future of the party can be. We need to grow our Republican Party. We need to do it by bringing in more voices, bringing in more college Republicans, young Republicans, suburban women, professionals into our party. And we need to recognize that we are not going to be an ideologically pure party. If we want to win again statewide, we need to be that Big Tent party that we've talked about before. And that's what I want to bring back to the Republican Party of Virginia. That's how we won previously with Governor Allen and then Senator Allen and Governor McDonnell and Governor Gilmore. They were Big Tent Republicans, and we need to allow different voices within our party, and that's what I want to usher in again if we're going to win again. And that's some of these party plan amendments I think go the wrong direction. So I want to make it clear that we need to allow elected officials and our candidates to represent the constituencies that elected them or that they're trying to get votes from. And so the messaging in Northern Virginia naturally will need to be different than the messaging in Southwest Virginia. We need to allow that in our Republican Party. And that's what I want to shepherd back in. And I want to grow the party both financially as well as in our base of supporters around Virginia. I now know what it takes to be the chairman, and I want to do it on my own 4-year term.
Well, that's a great closing argument, Jack. I think you stated it very well. We wish you the very best of luck. We don't endorse it Virginia free. We always wish everyone the very best in election cycle and always thank them for their service to not only the Commonwealth but the country for a very thankless job in involving yourself in party politics. So best of luck to you. If we can help you out at Virginia Free in the Virginia business community, as we would help out every other candidate. So everyone listening out there, we're nonpartisan, independent, proudly so. But we do love and appreciate good government in Virginia and a healthy democratic society for us all. So thank you, Jack Wilson, for your service to the state. We wish you the best next Saturday, and we'll see what the direction of the Republican Party is going to be going forward after that convention. Thank you, Jack Wilson.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Have a great day.
You too.